What is your most disturbing, scary, or creepy real story? A few years ago, I was walking through the woods off the beaten track a bit, and I smelt this really overpowering sweet smell. Being nosy, I pulled back the undergrowth to have a look, and found a dead body. The guy had clearly been there a while, and wasn't looking great. All swollen and green and black with various runny bits. The local wildlife had also been dining well for a few days. I called the police, who told me to wait with the body until they arrived. Being in the middle of nowhere, it took a while for them to arrive, and it got dark, and I was just sat there in the dark with him for a long time. It turned out he had committed suicide. For a long time afterwards, I had dreams about him, and he would talk to me and not nice things. Mainly about how he was angry I had disturbed his resting place, and he wanted me to kill myself. Probably just my imagination, but all pretty disturbing at the time. He still turns up in my dreams from time to time, and no doubt will be tonight after typing this. A few summers ago, I went for a bike ride around midnight with a friend. We went our separate ways at the end of the evening, and I had about 2 blocks to ride back by myself. Because of construction, I had to ride on the sidewalk, but the streets were dead, but it wasn't a problem until right where I was about to turn left onto my street. There was this man walking by himself, maybe 40s, a little scruffy but not homeless. The sidewalk was narrow, and I didn't want to freak him out, so when I got about 6 feet behind him, I said, "Hey, behind you!" And he turned around and gave me this super angry look. I turned down my street, and he started to follow me, literally screaming about how I was a fucking cunt, and he was going to kill me and all that. I live right off the corner, and I didn't want him to figure that out, so I decided to do another loop around the block. That's not the scary part. The scary part is that when I looped back around and looked down the street, I saw him standing on my fucking front stoop, staring out at the street like the motherfucker knew I lived there. He saw me ride by again, but he didn't say anything. I ended up going back to the friends, but my bike got stolen from the alleyway by the house 2 days later. Edit: the guy in question was definitely not actually homeless. We have a large population of mentally ill in that area, unfortunately, downtown of a medium-sized city, so if I didn't think the sidewalk was too narrow to pass, otherwise I wouldn't have disturbed him. Half the scary part was that he looked pretty much completely normal for my area. That being said, I ended up texting my mom, and she made the decision not to notify law enforcement until my bike was stolen. I woke up, clock says 3:34 a.m. I'm 17, and in my bedroom. It's pitch black, but I hear some rattling downstairs. Terrified, I quietly tiptoe to my parents' room. Weird, it's empty. Where are my parents at 3:34 a.m.? Go upstairs to my brother's room. He's usually awake all night, but while the light is on, no one is in the room. So, I guess whatever those noises are downstairs, it must be them. Why are they awake? Maybe someone died? I go downstairs. In the middle of my living room is what looks like 2 men stealing our TV. No one else is in sight. I run upstairs as quietly as possible, shut and lock my door. Suddenly there's banging on the door. I wake up. It was a dream, and the relief washes over me. I look over at the clock. Weird coincidence, it's 3:34 a.m. I'm shaking, but decide to go downstairs to prove to myself that everything's fine. I go downstairs. The 2 men are in my kitchen, screaming at my parents and brother. I run upstairs to my bedroom and lock the door. 10 seconds later, I hear banging. I woke up. It's 3:34 a.m. This time, I had actually woken up and I don't manage to fall back asleep for about 36 hours. I lived in a bizarre little house as a child. It was incredibly tall and thin, like an attached house except freestanding, with 3 floors, a basement and an attic. It was full of quirks, such as 2 fully functional fireplaces, a shower stall in the center of the basement, a backyard so small that you could not take 5 paces without hitting the fence, and an old-timey rope-pull dumbwaiter that led from the kitchen to my bedroom. I loved that weird little place, but unfortunately it was incredibly old, and half of its charm was the fact that it seemed to have been designed by an inarticulate conclave of lunatics, and eventually the repair costs exceeded what my parents were willing to sink into it, and we had to move. Preparing for the move was a chore. I packed most of my stuff myself, and I had taken to throwing stuff down the dumbwaiter, and shoving all my clothes so thickly in my closet that they became a single, solid brick of fabric. While clearing that closet out, in fact, I came across a feature I hadn't noticed before, an attic entrance in the roof. Being an adventurous kid, I opened her up, stood on the clothes brick, and began my first and last exploration into the topmost part of our weird little house. The first thing I noticed was that it wasn't as dark as it should have been. The place was strung with old red Christmas lights, which still burned with leftover incandescents, and a dozen little cracks and holes peeped down into all the bedrooms below. The second thing I noticed was that the place was set up for habitation. The insulation was plasticked away, there was an old gurney piled with sleeping bags and sheets, and a rusted mint green refrigerator which still worked when I tested it. The third thing was the bones. There were a lot of bones. I was a kid at the time, with a limited understanding of anatomy, but there were bones of all types heaped into a series of piles around the center of the attic. Small and large, clean and white, from every and any imaginable sort of creature, haphazardly stacked in a half-dozen osseous clumps. 2 of them were blackened, as if someone had tried to burn them, and the walls nearest those blackened piles were scrawled in dark bone-char messages. Mostly they were just smears, but the word sorry appeared more than once. That room had been sitting over my head for 8 years, while I slept. A week after gaining my CPR certification, I had to try and perform CPR on a woman dying of a heroin, probably other drugs too, overdose. I was at a thrift store with some friends, looking for Halloween costumes, and someone came in saying that someone was passed out in the parking lot. I was in the dressing room, and it just got super quiet, so I came out and told them I was certified and I'd go take a look and that they needed to call 911. I go outside and don't see anyone on the ground. Someone comes out and shouts that the person is in the car that's parked far out by itself. I ran over and honestly freaked the fuck out. She was pretty much already dead, completely blue in the face, slumped against her car window. She had the red druggy rings around her eyes, but those were blue too, because she was so oxygen deprived. We opened the door and I'll never forget that when we turned her head to see if she still had a pulse, she had tears running down her face. We pulled her out of the car, put her on the ground, and took her pulse again, because the first person to do it wasn't sure. We started CPR and the ambulance arrived about a minute after. They got her strapped up and in and continued CPR. They had another ambulance come and those EMTs got out, and there was literally like 6 of them surrounding her. The cop told us they had administered some type of drug that can apparently reverse heroin overdoses if given in time, but she was pretty much dead already. They would do the necessary stuff until they could get to the hospital and call it, according to him. I also remember, when we opened the door, there was heroin needles and empty pill bottles all over the floor. She wasn't very old. We also think she had kids. She had some toys and a car seat, plus 2 names tattooed on her. I was delivering a hot tub to this contractor/realtor in this fancy gated community near Branson, Missouri. When I arrived, the construction workers were in charge of telling me where the thing was supposed to go. It was going on the 4th floor balcony, but because of the way the house was built, the 4th floor was ground floor. The other 3 floors were on the side of a hill, but the driveway was even with the first 4th floor entrance, if that makes sense. So, a lot of construction going on, but to get the hot tub on the balcony, I had to make a ramp, take it from the drive, down into the yard, up a ramp to the porch, through the living room door, across the living room, out the back patio doors onto the deck. Problem with this was the deck was unfinished. A huge section of decking was missing. They had literally installed only enough decking so that I could go from the patio doors to the far corner of the deck where the hot tub would sit. There was no railing. The hot tub weighed 900 pounds, and it was a 4-story drop if I fell. The construction workers volunteered to help me. We got it out onto the deck, crossed the narrow bridge of installed decking to the corner, and I was about to lay it down. You move these on a dolly while the hot tub is on its edge for clarification. Laying it down isn't that hard. You tilt it, bring it down to your lap, grab the strap securing it to the dolly, and lower it to the deck. It's very controlled, and I'd done it thousands of times. However, this deck wasn't finished, so the contractor wanted to leave it on its edge. It's a lot harder to take it off when it's standing up, because the dolly is under a 900-pound tub. But I've done it before. I told them that we would have to put blocks under one side of the dolly, tilt the tub and pop the straps to release the dolly so it could be removed from the area. Then you tilt the hot tub back, remove the blocks and then set the hot tub down on the deck. Problem: the deck wasn't wide enough to allow me to do this safely. I popped the strap on the hot tub, put the blocks under, and I tilted the hot tub, but that put me with my feet 4 inches from the edge of the deck with nothing but 4 stories of air behind me. We were able to free the dolly on one side, but not the other. The hot tub had to be leaned over further toward me. I tell everyone to freeze and they do. I didn't want anyone messing with it, because I had to shift my feet back 5 inches, so my heels were off the deck. I'm freaking out, but it's all going smooth. I have a construction worker on each side of me helping support the tub, 3 construction workers freeing the dolly, and 1 useless worker playing with the strap that is going to secure the tub to the house, so that the wind doesn't blow the tub over. We are inches from having the dolly freed, when one of the construction workers freeing the dolly gets impatient and kicks the corner of the tub to dislodge it from the dolly. It works for him, but unfortunately for me, I didn't have my feet set yet. I shout that I'm falling. The 2 guys beside me take the weight of the tub, but no one can get to me. My arms are windmilling, I'm bent almost double backwards trying my damnedest to stay on the deck. I can see the boulders down below out of the corner of my eye. I'm falling and there isn't anything I can do about it. I feel myself go. I'm falling. My heels slip out from under me, and no one can reach me, but then suddenly, I'm flying forward. Something is under the small of my back, and it's slamming me into the bottom of the tub. The dolly is removed, and the tub stood up with me hugging it before I find out what saved me. The useless guy playing with the strap had already secured one end to the house. When I fell, the strap was already behind me, hanging off the deck. The construction worker pulled it tight with all his might, arresting my fall. It wasn't there for that purpose, but he saved my life that day. I would have been dead if not for him. I thanked him by sending him and his wife and kid to Breckenridge, Colorado for Christmas. It was actually a vacation I'd saved for, and was about to surprise my wife and daughter with. But I felt he deserved it more. Plus, my wife and daughter didn't know anything about it. Yeah, that was one of my most scariest moments ever. Okay, this is 100% true. I'm 23 now, and this happened about 10 years ago, so I was probably 13 or 14. Anyway, I used to skateboard all the time with my friends Tim and Brandon. One day, we got done skating, and we decided to go to 7-Eleven to get some food and drinks before we went home. Remember, I was only 13 or 14, so we weren't driving. We had skated to the 7-Eleven and were planning on skating walking back home. Anyway, we buy our drinks and we left the store. We walked to the parking lot's exit and prepared to cross the highway. It's not a bus highway, since it's a small town. While we waited for the traffic light to turn red, so that we could cross, I looked behind me at the 7-Eleven gas pumps. I noticed a 40 to 50-year-old man pumping gas into his white truck. He stared at me, and before I knew it, he dropped the gas pump and jumped into his truck. He slammed on the gas and sped straight at my friends and I. He missed us, but he grazed my arm and knocked my skateboard out of my hand. My friend, Brandon, screamed, "WTF. You fucking dick," as the man peeled out and sped into the parking lot next to 7-Eleven. I swear to God, he drove through a ditch, which was between 7-Eleven's parking lot and the parking lot he was in, and tried to run us over again. This is where it got bad. The three of us started running at full speed across the highway and toward the local library, which is like 2 to 3 blocks from 7-Eleven. When we were about 1 to 2 a block away, I looked back and saw the maniac speeding toward us, full of rage. Brandon and Tim ran up to the library doors, and I ran towards the woods. It was Sunday, so I knew the library was closed, and there was a trail in the woods, which led to my backyard. Meanwhile, this maniac peeled into the parking lot and hopped out of his truck. I looked behind me before escaping into the woods, and saw him grab either a shotgun or a crowbar. I was pretty far away at this point, and I was freaking out, so my vision wasn't great from the bed of his truck. I ran all the way home. When I got to my street, my neighbor, Tim's dad, told me to get in his car, because we had to go to the video store, which is where Tim's mom worked. When I got there, I found Tim and Brandon. They ran to the video store, after realizing that the library was closed, and 3 cops. A minute later, my mom came in, crying her eyes out, because Brandon and Tim told her they didn't know if I lived or not. Everyone had thought that I was captured. Tim told me that he saw the guy running after me into the woods, which is scary. Because I thought the maniac was chasing them, not me. Anyway, he was never caught. And I spent the next 5 years worrying about every white truck I saw. Edit, I forgot the most scary part. My town is small, but it's not empty. There were plenty of people around while this was going on. I felt so helpless, running for my life. While there were at least 100 people around, not doing a thing about it. Also, to be clear, we didn't provoke this man at all. He tried to hit us for no reason, and that's creepy. Brandon called him a dick, but that was after he tried to run us over. We were good kids, trying to walk home, and we almost died/got seriously hurt because of it. Also, bus highway, busy highway.